Good morning and welcome to another episode of Lake City Podcast. Today we have Tim Vassallo, who is the Director of Programming and Partnerships. Welcome, Tim.
Hi, Aimee. Thank you very much for interviewing me.
You're quite welcome. Tim, I was wondering, what inspired you to pursue a career in adult education and inclusive employment?
Well, my background originally was in sales, in retail sales, retail management, direct sales. I was a quote-unquote traveling salesman for a number of years. I really enjoyed some of that. I definitely enjoyed the traveling around, especially around land of Canada, because it's so beautiful and so diverse. But I felt like there was something missing. I did a career shift probably about 20 years ago. And I moved in the direction of adult education, employability support, helping people with disabilities go back to work, be more successful in work. And so I guess it came from observing people that I knew, people in my life, and maybe myself at certain times, the barriers that people face to be successful in the workplace. I mean, the one thing about in employability, it's one thing to find a job, interview for that job, and get that job. For some people, that's the most difficult part. However, for other people, it's keeping that job and thriving in that job, and maybe even developing and growing in that job, and moving up and getting promoted. So that's where my movement. I moved in that direction. Adult education is quite a bit different than, say, when you and I went to school and the teacher stood in front of the class and basically told you what you were going to learn, and you then wrote it down on a test. You probably forgot, not you, but me. I definitely forgot
I have.
most of what I learned. But adult education is built more on the principle of the learner being the one that sort of directs the direction things are going, and being people-centric or person-centered. And the other thing about adult education is that the learner, the adult learner, has to have a feeling of they have to be connected to what they're learning. And they're not going to buy into it if they don't believe in what it is that they're learning. So adult education kind of includes the person's their background, where they were before they got to where they are, and builds on all those things. So that sort of was my main impetus to move into that direction.
Oh, wow. Can you share a pivotal moment from your 20 years of employability and entrepreneurship? Like, what stood out to you?
Well, for me, like I was saying earlier about people getting jobs but not thriving. When I was working my first couple jobs, I worked in the nonprofit world. What I noted was a lot of people, the sort of how things have changed so much in the workplace has really affected people. The other thing is that one of the most pivotal moments that I had was when I realized that employment wasn't one thing. We would have been brought up to believe a job was 5 days a week, 40 hours a week. You got 2 weeks vacation, and you did that until you were 60 some odd years old and you retired. The landscape has changed dramatically. So what I started noticing is that some people decided to do 2 jobs rather than 1 full-time job. Some people, the idea of working 40 hours a week, was daunting for them. Maybe they had other things going on. They were raising a family. They had health concerns, whether they were physical, mental health, or what have you. So I realized that employment wasn't just one thing. It was very individual, and all work is important. Mm-hmm. All work has a purpose, and people want to be connected. The vast majority of people that I've met in my life, they want to have a purpose in their lives. Sometimes they're in a job that doesn't meet that purpose, and they have to look elsewhere. Sometimes people do a job that pays the bills. Maybe they're a mountain biker, and the job they have just provides them with a new mountain bike every year and the gear they need for mountain biking, and the job provides the opportunity. But most people, we're paying bills, we're raising families, we're taking care of ourselves. But the most important thing is that employment isn't just one thing. It's a multifaceted concept.
That's for sure. How did you manage to transition into your current role as Director of Programming and Partnerships at LakeCity?
Well, like I referenced earlier, in my earlier career, I was in retail management. So I managed stores. I had a team of people underneath me, when I worked in retail, and I learned through trial and error the best way to manage people and to lead people, and the difference between a manager and a leader. And so in nonprofit, I mostly worked in employability and job placements and job development. I had a couple opportunities where I moved in a bit more of a supervisor role or coordinator type role, and I found I actually really thrived in those roles. So I was in a role about 4 years ago at the Prescott Group over in Halifax, and we started up the first job finding club for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities in Canada, and it was a really exciting time. I was really honored and I felt quite lucky to have that opportunity to be part of something that started, the genesis of it started with an idea and that was built on that. During that time, I realized that my skills as a employability instructor, a career development practitioner, those things were all a big part of who I was. But I noted that I had an ability to lead. I had an ability to model my behavior, the behavior of a professional. And I thought, this is an opportunity that, at this stage of my career, I should really take advantage of that. So an opportunity opened up. I live in Dartmouth. I live a 5-minute drive away from LakeCity Works. I saw a job open up for the Director of Programming and Partnerships at LakeCity. I'd always been very interested in the work that LakeCity did. Back in my employability days, we, in other organizations, we often had referrals from LakeCity where people who had been community clients were referred out to different programs. And I was always really intrigued about what went on here because there was so many different things. There was wood furniture, plastic furniture. There was the fact they had employment navigators. They had a reboot program where they had recycled computer equipment. It always really intrigued me that there was so much going on in this little tiny building that isn't so tiny once you get inside of it on Windmill Road. So I applied for the job. I was lucky enough to get an interview. I did a Zoom interview back in the day when people were doing Zoom interviews. And very shortly after my interview, I got hired and I started my career here at LakeCity. And I can tell you that I've held some pretty important jobs, some pretty cool jobs, things I'm very proud of, but nothing has fulfilled that side of me of being a leader and modeling behaviors and leading by example. Other than this job here at LakeCity has been definitely the highlight of my career.
That's awesome. What are some common misconceptions about hiring individuals that have mental health barriers?
One major misconception is that people living with mental health challenges are unreliable or less productive. In reality, with the right supports, kind of supports that we provide people here at LakeCity, they often bring resilience and creativity and unique problem-solving skills to the workplace. One other myth is that the accommodations are going to be costly or overly complicated. Most are very simple, low-cost adjustments, flexible scheduling, clear communication, even as simple as a properly lit room, office space. Employers often assume that disclosure is necessary, but privacy and dignity are paramount. So I believe disclosure of a disability is personal. I don't coach people to disclose or not to disclose because it is a very personal thing, but I do inform people these are the benefits, these are the potential pitfalls, maybe this is a good time to do it and why, and maybe how to bring a solution to the table as opposed to just identifying a problem. But like most misconceptions, they're built upon fear, misunderstanding, and a lot of stigma.
So, if there's a business that wants to hire somebody with a mental health barrier, what benefit would come to them from adopting inclusive employment practices?
Well, first of all, being an inclusive employer and offering that support to your staff, you're building trust, you're building loyalty. People, first of all, people with mental health barriers are no different than people without mental health barriers, in the sense of, if you treat somebody with respect and give them a job that's worthwhile doing and that is fulfilling, most people will do the best they can do. But the one most important thing about across the board hiring people with disabilities in general is you get a unique perspective that maybe you wouldn't gain from hiring somebody who didn't have a barrier, simply because people who are living with mental health challenges or physical disabilities, they're problem solvers. They've been problem solving their whole lives. They're survivors. They're resilient. They're tough. So hiring a person who, say, for example, LakeCity is an organization, a nonprofit organization that provides employability, skills development, and supported employment to people living with mental health barriers. What you get is a person who is resilient. You don't have to find out how tough they are. Just that person being there that day proves to you how tough that individual is.
What makes LakeCity Works unique compared to other employment support organizations?
I'll say the same thing that back in my employability days, when I would be coaching people in interview skills, and the question would be like, why should we hire you and not somebody else? So what I would always focus on is like, remove the other person from the conversation. So I'm not judging other organizations, and I'm not saying we're better than, but we are unique. We offer a diverse suite of employment opportunities in the supported employment realm, from a doggy daycare to working in our wood shop, working in our plastic furniture manufacturer. We have LakeCity Helpers, which does property maintenance. We're out working for seniors, mowing lawns, raking leaves. You have an opportunity working in retail. You have an opportunity to do some programming. There's so many different and unique and diverse opportunities here. I think that separates us from, say, an organization that runs a cafe. That's great, and I think that's really important, and they do develop a lot of skills. But the skills are limited to customer service and food service, which are very important things, and those people are employment ready when they finish a program like this. LakeCity has a lot of different touch points for people. That somebody might want to work in our steaks department where they cut survey steaks for the construction industry, and they might see a delivery driver going out on deliveries and go, I wonder what that guy does. And they ask one of the program coordinators about it, and that person then gets the opportunity to maybe go deliver some furniture and some steaks. So they're coming to LakeCity for one experience, and then they develop this other opportunity. All that being said, we also have a recreation side to what we do here. So we have a games club, we have a movie club, we have coffee circle. People get together, talk with their peers, share experiences, have a little snack. We have art club. We have what we're doing here today. We have a media club. So people can come to us for employment and say, I saw guys up in a room watching a movie one day when I went upstairs to meet with my program coordinator. What's that all about? Well, on Tuesdays we have movie club. You can come by on a Tuesday afternoon and you can join the movie club and sit down and watch a movie. That person might have only come to us for recreation programming, and they're watching a movie, and they take their break. They're downstairs in our Fernhill break room chatting with some of the folks that work in the steak department. The people in the steak department are telling them about what they do, and that person comes upstairs and says to the program coordinator, I'd like to try working in the steaks department. So it's a very fluid opportunity here. People can start off one way. At LakeCity, we have volunteer opportunities, we have skills development opportunities, we have supported employment opportunities, and recreation. And some people do all four. So that's what I think makes Lake City unique.
That's awesome. Now, can you tell us about a success story that really illustrates the impact of Lake City Works programming?
Well, one of the things that I'm most proud of since I've been here is the development of our Lake City Helpers program. When I started about 4 years ago, we were doing home services, it was called. We were going to go in the community, and we were, mowing a couple lawns a week during the lawn mowing season. I felt as though there was opportunities that were being left on the table. We weren't taking advantage of the opportunities that were being presented to us. So we get some support through one of the organizations we belong to called Directions Council. They get some money from the province to offer services to seniors. And I thought we could do more than a couple lawns a week. So we started ramping up. We changed the name to Lake City Helpers. We had a van that could go around. We could load it with gear. We started doing more and more and more. So now we're at the point where this season we've had 10 different people work supported employment roles with Lake City Helpers. Last year, we raked 1,000 bags of leaves. We helped about 80 seniors with their lawn maintenance. We had partnerships with other nonprofit organizations like the Affordable Housing Association of Nova Scotia, Rooted Housing. We work with Feed Nova Scotia, Easter Seals. We do their property management for them. So that opportunity to be a nonprofit that's out there helping seniors remain in their homes, aging in a more healthy way at home. We take care of the lawn mowing and the lawn maintenance, but also providing these services to other nonprofits that, first of all, we are more affordable than a for-profit business. We're providing supported employment to our people. We're keeping the nonprofit organization like Feed Nova Scotia, we're keeping their property looking nice. So it's a win-win-win situation. So I'm proud of everything that's happened since I've been here. Our movement to supported employment, we have about 75 supported employees on site at Lake City right now. But the Lake City Helpers going from this small, opportunity-laden program to being a program that's fulfilling its full potential, that's the thing I'm most proud of.
That's awesome. Are there any trends in career development that excite you the most right now?
I would say that just the idea of being inclusive, it is something you see more in the press. You see it in social media, being open-minded to people with their differences, being more inclusive in our hiring, maybe being a little bit more ready to take, say for example, a job role at, say, a grocery store where somebody's working the cart corral, bringing in the carts from the parking lot. Maybe that role requires that person to clean the bathrooms. But you hire somebody who just cleaning bathrooms just as something they can't do. It's not that they don't want to do it. Maybe it's just something a little bit too real for them. Something that maybe, because of they might live with a barrier where they fixate on that, or maybe they'll never get it clean. Taking that off their job description and maybe putting something else on the job description. Like maybe they could also go in the parking lot and pick up cigarette butts. They might be doing sampling around the store where they give out samples. So being ready to take tasks off a job description and put tasks onto that to make it more inclusive as opposed to being exclusive. So I see those trends happening. I also have seen a lot of understanding that maybe not everybody wants to work a full-time job. So I was working with an organization here in Dartmouth that wanted to hire a full-time property maintenance cleaner for their facility. And I persuaded them through conversation. I mean, I'm not going to take full credit for it because they still had to decide that it was a good idea. But through consultation with them, we persuaded them to divide that into 2 part-time jobs. So where maybe a full-time job, 40 hours a week, that would have been difficult for the people that we work with. Dividing it into 2 part-time jobs increases that opportunity. People can go into the community and work, be successful, develop those skills, and instead of it being 1 person, it's 2 people. You double that opportunity. So those types of trends I'm seeing.
Awesome. If you could design the perfect inclusive workplace, what would it look like?
I would say that, like a physical workspace, it would have to be flexible. So there would have to be, like, for example, if it's an office setting, there has to be the opportunity for remote work, sort of doing some type of a combination of work from home, work from office, adapted schedule. So we often get caught into this trend of work is 8 to 4. 8 to 4, 8 to 4, 9 to 5, 9 to 5. We hear that all the time. There was that song, working 9 to 5, and it was burned into our brain. But that paradigm was built out of a necessity that's 100 years old or more. So changing those schedules, some people are morning people, some people are afternoon afternoon people. I remember when I worked in retail many years ago in a tourist town, one of the most common schedules was a split schedule, where you worked a morning, you were off for the afternoon, and you worked in the evening. Some people would hate that, but some people would love that, because back in those days when I was young and active, I used those 4 hours in the afternoon to go hiking, go mountain biking, go skiing, go snowboarding. I used that time, and I think people would do the same if that were the case. The other thing is, I think we have to get back to people supporting each other at work. That peer-to-peer support is so important that I think this post-COVID paradigm that we're living in right now, we had forgotten what that was like. And I think we have to start getting back to that, having it not being 2 people competing with each other. But as an organization that works with people living with mental health barriers, I think one of the most important things is that mental health in the workplace is something that we have to take very seriously. We have to understand how it affects people. I think we have to develop a model that's inclusive in that way. Checking with people, making sure we know how everybody's doing, offer professional development around those. At LakeCity, we were very lucky. We did the applied suicide interventional skills training not that long ago. We did MANT training, which is sort of a version of nonviolent crisis intervention. We did mental health of the workplace. These things are really important because not only do they increase your knowledge base, they make you feel special. They make you feel honored by your employer.
What advice would you give to employers that are a little hesitant about inclusive hiring?
I think, there's part of me that wants to say something like, for people to wake up and realize how important this is, and, maybe get impatient with people. But I really think people have developed, they've believed negative stereotypes of people living with mental illness. There's still a stigma attached to it. I think with mental illness, it's such a unique thing because it's an invisible disability. If someone walked into a room with a cast on their arm and a sling, you'd instantly know that person probably broke their arm, and you would feel a certain level of sympathy and empathy for that person. Sympathy because it must have hurt really bad. Empathy, you might have gone through something like that before, and you know how difficult it is when you break your arm. Maybe you don't get to play the sports you want to play. It could be as simple as writing is more difficult. We can understand that. We have empathy. When somebody's living with a mental health barrier, first of all, empathy makes us it provides us with the opportunity, but it also causes us to go to a place in ourselves that connects with that person. That's scary for a lot of people. I personally believe that every person has gone through some form of mental health challenge in their lifetime, whether that was situational, whether that was changes in life, moving away from home for your first time. I still remember moving away to college for my first time, living in Quebec, living in a province where I didn't speak the language. I knew nobody there. I had no friends. I had no connection. I thought for the longest time I'd made a big mistake. I was very anxious. I was very nervous. And there was periods of that time where I was quite depressed. Now, I came out of that. So, I'm not equating my experience to somebody who's living with clinical depression. But I do understand that. And I think that scares people. So I think that for an employer who is nervous about hiring somebody with a mental health barrier, I think what they have to do is just put aside their preconceived assumptions, their stereotypes, and meet that person. Because if, there's an old saying that if you've met one person with mental illness, you've met one person with mental illness. They're not all the same. We're not all the same. Give people the opportunity to show who they are and what they can do. I believe most employers would be very surprised, and I think pleasantly surprised, to see the outcomes of that.
Oh, yeah, definitely. For someone starting in a career in career development or adult education, what would be your number one tip for them?
Be open. I was watching a TV show last year called Ted Lasso about this football coach who becomes a soccer coach in England, and it's a fish out of water story, but there's a lot of very funny scenes in it, very empowering. But there was this one main scene where he's challenging this individual is challenging him to a dart match, and hasn't thought about, can this guy play darts, when he challenged him to the dart match. So he tells a story about his life. And he said that he saw a sign, a graffiti written on a wall saying, "Be curious, not judgmental."
I like that.
And he said that that's how he decided to live his life that way. And I was like, the moment I heard it, I stopped it. And I was like, be curious, not judgmental. If you make a decision, you've closed your mind off, you're done. But being curious, you're asking questions. What's that like for you? Where do you come from? What have your experiences been? Especially with career development and adult education, you want to know where that person came from, what they're capable of, what their dreams are, what their fears are. So being open-minded is, I think, an open mind is the key that unlocks all the doors. So that's my advice: is be open-minded and be curious.
What's one more thing you wish more people understood about mental health and employment?
I just think that most people want the opportunity to give back. Most people want the opportunity to be a contributor to our community, to our society. People want that opportunity to show what they can do. And I just think that that's the most important thing, that giving people the opportunity to be the best person they can be in any given moment, that's the best advice I can give anybody.
That's awesome. I've definitely learned a lot from you today, Tim.
Thank you.
And I hope you guys out there have learned too. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to come and have a conversation with me.
My pleasure. It's my pleasure, Aimee. Thank you very much.
Thanks.